The following video was sponsored by the Greek American Heritage Society of Philadelphia, preserving and promoting our community's history.
The history of the Greek American community in Philadelphia begins in the early 20th century around Old City, where the faithful gathered. In 1906, the community launched what became the sixth oldest church in America. When the Greek community expanded into West Philadelphia, a new satellite church was opened in 1942, St. Demetrios of Evangelismos of the Theotokos. The relationship between the two congregations became strained over time, but eventually the two churches separated and they went on as independent congregations. But how this story played out has been rarely discussed today. Our guest today arrived in 1965 and played a pivotal role in this history. He is Professor Emeritus Father Papademetriou from Hellenic College with a 57-year career as a priest and as a professor.
Right.
Father, welcome to Cosmos Philly. Today's conversation, our churches, our history in Philadelphia that you were part of. Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Thank you, Leftedi. I'm greatly honored to be asked to say a few words about my experience here in Philadelphia. I was in Fortworth, Texas, and I was there 5 years, and I asked then my bishop, Bishop Silas, who later became Metropolitan Silas of this area, and I asked him if there is anything open in the northeast. I would love to accept a position like that. And so it came that he called me up and he says, this is what the Archbishop suggests for you to come to Philadelphia. It's a community that had a lot of problems, but now it's settled down. So I came, knowing nothing about Philadelphia.
What year was that?
In 1965, in the fall.
In the fall. Where did you settle into? Were you living in the city, in the suburbs somewhere? Or?
We came to Elkins Park, and before we came, Mr. Pappas, Antonius Pappas, found us a house in Cheltenham Avenue on the Philadelphia side.
Were you assigned to be the parish?
I was assigned in Elkins Park, and this is my response. And I came, and as I came. As I said, I was told there were problems with the community, but everything was settled, and I came here knowing that I will serve a parish in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Can you describe the congregation at the time, how big it was? Were there any organizations that had formed or that were part of the parish at the time?
The congregation was not large, but it was steady, and I made every effort to go and meet the people who they were and inform them of the ministries that we had, and eventually it improved. The strongest, I think, ministry that we had at the time was the Sunday school. The Sunday school was very strong. We had some dedicated teachers, and it was a wonderful experience, I think, for our young people. The Sunday school instruction of our faith and imparting the faith to our young people was very important for me. And so we continued that. And then, of course, we had young people, I think we call it Goya or some organization for young people. Of course, the Philopa was very strong. And it was a regular run community that serviced the Greek Orthodox Christians of Northeast.
Can you tell us about those years, or what you know and familiar of the relationship where you played your role between the two congregations, what was going on, and how it changed and evolved?
There were two congregations, one Evangelismos, Annunciation, which was situated in downtown Center City, that moved to Elkins Park.
What year did they actually move?
I don't recall the exact, around 63, 64, somewhere there. And the other was the St. Demetrios that was established in the
40s, early 40s?
In the 40s. And these two communities run as one community. There was one board. In fact, we alternated meeting. The parish council would meet in Elkins Park one month. The next month would be in Upper Darby, and then alternate back and forth.
How long did that continue? Was that through the 60s, or did it end by the 60s?
I don't recall the exact date, but during my tenure here, as we saw the difficulty of running two parishes with one board, it was suggested that we break up and have each parish take its own take care of its own business. So the decision was, and agreed by both, that the cemetery graves that was in near St. Demetrios was to be transferred to St. Demetrios, and the cash that was there to be transferred to Annunciation because of the financial strain that it had. So therefore, it was an not only amicable but mutually welcome, this breakup.
About what time are we talking about? Is this 65 just as you got there, or did it take a few years?
It might have taken 2-3 years, yeah, because there was still the cell of the church in in Center City. It didn't take place, so that had to be resolved before the community had to continue, decided to break up its bond.
So in 60, so that time frame we're talking about is 65 through 69 when this was taking place. Well, the relationship was also strained for a while, and we've heard that the two churches had to go to the state Supreme Court, where a decision was made about the destiny of the two churches. Do you know that history?
Yes, the strain and the fight in the courts that you mentioned were not with St. Demetrios, but rather with some people that did not want to give up their church in the Center City, and they maintained the church. Though the community officially moved to Elkins Park, these people decided to continue services there.
Is that another history that we were talking about? Because there are two churches that carry the same name. One is generally identified in English, which is the historic Church of Evangelismos, which is today more referenced as Annunciation of Elkins Park. And then there is Evangelismos, which is on Bustleton Avenue. Are those histories tied together somehow? Are those members from that original church another group, or is that an entire other history?
Well, in a sense, up to that point, it was a common history. Then, when the church moved to Elkins Park, Evangelismos, actually, in those days was referenced as Annunciation Evangelismos. Both names were used. When this happened, each took its own. The other, I'm not too familiar with the situation of the church that remained. However, we had to finally ask the people to leave so the church could be sold.
So the group that moved on, that became Evangelismos on Busselton Avenue, that group had a tie to 12th and Catherine, if that's what we're familiar with. Are you familiar with that history, and can you?
Well, as I said, they remained intact. They would not give up the church. People that they were, if we go there, they would be very nasty to us. In fact, I remember I went with Constantine Stefano there, and we entered the church and we looked. I was admiring the furniture, the architect, the design of the furniture, which was beautiful, and other things that I personally was interested. But anyway, the community decided I had nothing to contribute to that point, because the community decided to move to Elkins Park, and that was my objective, to get this church going on and continue in Elkins Park. However, the people that remained there maintained their own community, and one day we saw a big spread of news in the newspapers. I don't know, there were a couple of newspapers here in town. I don't remember the names now, but
The Inquirer.
Inquirer, Inquirer. That's right, Inquirer. And if I remember correctly, it was a spread and the announcement that there was a bishop from Egypt who would come here and have a big celebration and all kinds of. So this disturbed some of our members of the board of the parish council, and so we consulted our lawyer, and he contacted the judge, who said, no one, in order to have that happen, the leader of the church, the archbishop, must give me a okay for them to do the services there. But we wanted them to empty the church so we can sell it. This was the objective. Then when the judge received an answer from the archbishop saying that I do not permit anyone to function as a community and worshiping community in the Center Street Church, the Evangelismos, which was situated in the Center Street, then the judge ordered them to vacate.
That was about what year would you say that is?
It was after 66, perhaps, or somewhere there. Yeah.
So you were here, you were present when that was all going on.
Right.
And you tried to play a medial role for the community.
We tried to, I know that we're brothers and sisters in Christ. We were one community that received communion from the same cup, but then this unfortunate thing happened, that some people did not want to accept the wish of the community, and there were some questions. I read all the minutes, all the documents when I first came here, how that happened, but everybody had their own opinion. So the judge accepted the leader, the archbishop's the direction. So it was vacated.
So they eventually used a home somewhere near 12th and Catherine.
Well, those details I do not know. I had no contacts. The only time that I met the priest, I went with Constantine Stefano to the church to look at and the priest was there, who was a little nasty to us. But I I had nothing to say to him because I didn't know the situation, first, and secondly, I had to stand on the ground that the courts took care, the community made its decision, and this is how we must move forward. This is my, that was my opinion and my action.
The church eventually moved to Philadelphia, not too far away from Evangelismos.
That was after
you were gone. What about the relationship? Now, St. George, which today we call our cathedral church, were you at that time, did the churches have a relationship, the two churches, since they were in the same historic Greek neighborhood? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I know after my family and I moved to Elkins Park, we had a great relationship with all the communities, the Father Lobothetis, Father Catrilis, and Father Gregory from Brumel. We all met at someone's house, alternating every month with our families to meet each other, but also to have to have fellowship and talk about different things, not necessarily church business, but family things. Just a fellowship. And whenever we celebrate the name day of St. Nicholas, the priest would come. In fact, with Father Catrilis, his wife's name was Antonia, and my wife was Athanasia. So you Antonia one day, and St. Athanasius the next day. So we had, he would come to celebrate my Presbyteros' name day, and we go to his church. So we had the fellowship as priests. The communities you can't control, and I don't know what really happened between people. Maybe they were friendly, maybe were not friendly. I don't know. People are people, and they find a way of expressing their feelings.
Okay, well, let's talk about the formation of Evangelismos up in Elkins Park. How did that church come to be? We know that there was a congregation that was first holding gatherings in a home. There's a family here, the Stefanos, that are historically recognized in our community, and then the actual church that was built at the end of the Broad Street line. So can we talk about some of that?
Yes. Actually, the church was intact. Parish council, everything was intact because it was here, Center City, and then moved there to Elkins Park. Mm-hmm. It was intact. Officially and recognized by the state, by the archdiocese, by everybody, that the church officially was there. The people that stayed behind and they did their own thing, they held services and all, were not neither legal or canonical or appropriate, I would say.
Are we talking about 5 people, 50 people, 100?
There were a lot of people. I do not know how many people there were, but I know that there were a lot of people involved.
And the congregation that went up to Elkins Park?
Well, I don't know. The officials, the congregation went to Elkins Park. Some followed. They would take the train from downtown Philadelphia and come to Elkins Park, because
and walk from the train's final destination, right, across the.
Yeah.
And there was it a home? They owned a home.
This was a home that they transformed it into a church that was functioning, but not very well, because upstairs was the church and a basement. We tried to have Sunday school, but it was not. And there was a house where the teacher lived, and just a garage apartment actually.
Oh, now was that house owned by someone in the congregation?
No, that house was owned by someone in the church when they moved there. And this house, this property, was abutting with the Stefano mansion that
Was next door or nearby? Oh, adjacent to it.
abutting it, you know, and it was the Stefanos had sold it before I got here. In a way, sometime they sold it, and that was made a school.
Let's just briefly segue to the Stefanos just for a moment. They were a well-known family in the cigar or cigarette industry that had arrived, one of the earliest families here in Philadelphia.
That's right. I knew the grandson of the original Stefano, Constantine, who was president of the company. He was a graduate of Princeton University in chemistry, degree in chemistry, and he was a wonderful individual. The day that his building, his beautiful building, the factory, Stefano Brothers factory, was torn down, he drove me by to say he was very upset, very down, and he says, "This is my building has been torn down today." So they're demolishing the building, and he was upset. I know he, but he was very devoted individual, very committed to the church, very good to people, and he was kind, and I had a great experience with his relationship.
Let's move from the house and the Stefano residence next door to the actual site of the present-day church. How did this happen?
We decided to build a church. The architect, one of the famous architects, Stuart Thompson, who was a famous architect who worked in the restoration of the Agora in Athens, actually, and that's where I learned the Byzantine architecture. He built the chapel at Holy Cross in Brookline, and so he came and he says, "This is not exactly the church that I would build in, you know, I would like to build in a more a different lot." So we looked around. There was a beautiful house, a mansion actually, on 611. 611, the main road there, and I searched around and I found he was a member of the Episcopal Church, and I went to the minister there. We talked about it, and I got his name. We went with the president, Dr. Borden, and proposed to him to buy the property, though there was no sign for sale.
I was going to ask, there was no sale sign, but you saw this, you folks saw this property, said this is perfect for us.
And so they said, okay. We said, we're going to give you $100,000. That's what we're going to get from the selling of our property. And the gentleman says, I want $101,000. So the deal was made right there. And so it was, this was accomplished. And then, of course, we had groundbreaking. We had the Archbishop Jacob was come for the groundbreaking, then a banquet at the hotel up the street. And I remember very well, that was the day that Kennedy, not the president, but Senator Kennedy was transporting on the train to be buried in Washington. This was sort of a sad day, but also for us as a community was a beautiful day, a joyful day, because we beginning we making a new beginning, that we were hoping that this church will flourish and serve the people of God in that area.
4 years in Philadelphia, a short time. What did you take away, and where are you today?
The Archbishop always encouraged me and wanted me to get a doctorate. And of course, I had a Taylor Scholarship and all that. And I had, while I was in Texas, even applied to Temple and University of Pennsylvania. Both accepted me, but I decided Temple was a better better fit because it was theology with philosophical background. So this is perfect for me. So I decided to go to Temple, and then I was given a small parish, so I'd have time to write my dissertation. They assigned me to Annapolis, Maryland, and I traveled. And in fact, I made a commitment to teach 1 year at Roseman College, and then I had to travel from Annapolis, Maryland, to Philadelphia. Then I would go to Roseman College, come back to Philadelphia, and then take another train and go north of Philadelphia to Temple, take my class, 6 to 10, and then take the train and go at midnight.
Sounded like a busy schedule. How long did that last?
That lasted only a year. And I finished my work, and then I wrote my dissertation, and I got my degree from Temple University, a PhD.
And then you moved on to Annapolis, and then...
I was in Annapolis, stayed there a few years, and then, again, as I said, the Archbishop always encouraged me to go to the Boston area, so I would be able to help in the school if there was a need for it.
So again, you were reassigned or assigned to go to an area to play another pivotal role.
Well, I stayed there only a few years, and then when the school was ready, asked me to become the librarian. So I was the director of the library, and I simultaneously I taught some courses on St. Gregory Palamas, which I love to talk about it, and I love to teach. And you know, it's a great theologian of our church, a 14th century theologian. And also, I taught in the college. I taught world religions in the college, and in the seminary, the School of Theology, I taught Judaism, Islam, and other religions, and how to approach and how to talk to these people, and how what they believe and things of that sort.
Okay, tell us about today. You've had a long career. How do you spend your time today?
I spend my time by doing some writing, some translation of important texts from the Greek into English. But my great ambition is to write a text on our faith, though there are many, many good texts, but I want to write in simple English, and that it's all inclusive. This depends if God lets me live long enough to finish it, and I'm doing this sort of a thing. So I thank you very much, and I thank God for allowing me to live this long and come back to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is one of our favorite places in my heart because, I always used to say, but my family didn't understand me. Now they do, though. I said I want to retire either in Philadelphia or in Boston. So it happened for us to be in Boston, so we retired. I'm retired there, which is a beautiful place, and I have the opportunity to use the library, I call up the librarian there and I said, I want such a book, such an article. And my granddaughter works twice a week at the school, and she picks them up for me and delivers it. So I have a special courier that brings me the material. So I do. Right now, my hope and great ambition is also to finish a small book that I'm writing on hesychasm, Orthodox way of prayer, and Hindu yoga. This is, of course, this was part of my training, comparative religion, at Temple University, and so it shouldn't be difficult, but it's more difficult than I thought it would be. But anyway, I've been working on that 5 years. Maybe if God allows me another 5 years and I finish it. Thank you very much, Eleftheri, and I wish you well. Actually, I thank you for the beautiful work you're doing to preserve the history of our people. It is important that we, as Greek Orthodox in this country, must maintain and preserve our history, because our of forthcoming generations will know nothing about their background. So it is important, because I always dreamt of doing something like that, but I had neither the time nor the funds to do it. And I congratulate you, and I wish you well, and I wish you good health and strength and God's blessing to continue this work.
Thank you so much. From 1965 to 1969, he was the parish priest of Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church in Elkins Park today. Father Papademetriou, thank you for talking with us, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you. God bless you.
For more information about sponsoring or viewing the interview series, visit the Greek American Heritage Society of Philadelphia online at gahsp.org.